What follows is a project on keying a couple of master number 6121 padlocks to a client's existing key. And we'll start off with a recorded conversation with the client first. Admittedly, I like to speak about specific terms with other locksmiths, and the client is not a locksmith, but the client will use terminology that is somewhat correct for the locksmithing industry without an understanding of what those terms mean. And based on prior conversations with the client, there are things that you can do in locksmithing, and then there are things that you can get away with for a little while, but ultimately you're going to need to do something else. And it's the inherent nature of most weekend locksmith warriors or homeowners or people that are accustomed to just having it done the way they want to do it, and it'll just work forever and don't tell me anything different. The bottom line is, what you'll hear is that this is at least a second generation key that the client has sent us. This could be more than that. Doesn't look like it's really been used at all, or very little. The client will go on to tell me that he's got many of these keys, copies of this key, out in the field. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take two of these Master 6121 padlocks and I'm going to key them. And I don't know if I've ever rekeyed a master padlock. I think I have once. Whatever this keyway is, it goes in just fine, so no problem there. But the only way to ensure that all existing keys will work in this padlock after I combinate it to this is to have all of those keys. Now that might seem odd to you, and I acknowledge that. However, they're all not brand new keys. They're all keys that have been used, that are in existence, that are old, but not very old, I don't believe. I don't recall what the client said. But you'll have a different rate of usage on each of these physical pieces of metal. The material does wear. The pins in existing padlocks do wear. And sooner or later, when that occurs, whether it be 3 years or 5 years or 12 years or 20 years, you get to a point where you can no longer get reliable service out of the entire system because of those ever different rates of wear and tear on the pins, on the plugs, the broaching in the cylinder plug, the milling on the key blank, the cuts on the key blank. So one point I'm trying to drive to him is, please don't tell me my business. I'm merely trying to tell you again and again that when these padlocks leave, I guarantee it's going to work to this key and the copy that I will cut for this key. Existing keys, will they work? Yeah, most likely, because they're probably very close to this. But I can't guarantee it, and I'm not guaranteeing it. All I'm making sure is it works this at least second generation key. Second generation means this was copied from a first or original key. Now we're here. How do I know that the person who cut this, to give it to this landlord, to mail it to me, had their machine intolerance? It was probably never even checked. I don't even know if this key works the existing system. So having to explain it more than twice is definitely something that I don't appreciate doing, just because I understand it, locksmiths very much understand it, and clients refuse to think that way in lots of instances. So what will follow is the recorded conversation. What will follow that is me actually doing the work. I know how these get pinned. We're going to take a closer look at the information. So why don't we move to the conversation and then move through this quick project. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
AB Supply, this is Richard.
Good morning, Richard. It's Jim calling. We were just going back and forth on email about those padlocks.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, so I think you got it right this time, but I don't just want a copy of the key. I want a key made using your machine that cuts them based on the bidding.
That leads me to believe that you have a deeper understanding of locksmithing than the casual consumer. Describe this machine to me?
Oh, okay. I thought you had confirmed that you had one.
I have.
So,
I probably own 15 key machines. They're
okay,
they're all they all get to the same way a little bit differently. So the one that you want me to use, describe that one to me.
well, I don't know what it is. My local locksmith said it exists. Effectively, I want a new factory original key based on the bidding that you're reading off of the master lock that I sent you, or the master lock key that I sent you. You know, I suspect the key that you have is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And so I'd like to try to get back to as close to a factory original as I could.
So first of all, lots of things to unpack there. What you sent me is not a master key. What you sent me was some unknown key blank manufacturer that happens to share the same milling as a key as the broaching in a cylinder that would be installed in a master padlock.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know what this was originally. It has marginal wear on it, but nothing that I would deem as a problem. But getting back to what that key was before it was ever used would be problematic in the sense that I don't know what that was.
Well, isn't that based on the bidding?
It's based on the fact that it's a used key. You've got 4 tires on a car and you want a new tire, but take that used tire and make it a new tire. I have no way to put back what's been taken away. If I were to even do that, if I were to put my caliper on these and derive the root depth, which is what the bidding is, it's not the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers that you're familiar with. The root depth is what the bidding is.
Right.
I could make an educated guess as to what the bidding on the key would have been when it was produced at the factory, but I don't know that for sure.
No, I recognize that.
Well, unless you're a locksmith, you don't understand it. Then the problem with me doing what you're saying is I'm going to take a key, I'm going to put it back to a bidding that it's not, and then cut a copy of it, which would very, very likely mean that the key that I created will not work any lock that this existing key blank that you mailed me works in, because if you have a caliper, try to look at .003 on that caliper. It is minuscule. It is the word minuscule is an order of magnitude too large to describe that distance. All it takes is to be about 0.003 off, and the key won't work. So the only way for any of this to work is to simply, I assume that you've got other padlocks that work off this existing key.
So it's a matter of the opposite way around, is that we've got keys that have been distributed that work these padlocks, and I'm trying to replace the padlocks that belong to the keys.
So the only key that's going to work this when it leaves here is the key that you've sent me, along with a copy that I've made of it.
Okay.
The only keys that I guarantee are going to work, because again, it's the .003 inch. If you've got a 3-flat, the front door of the 3-flat that every unit, all 3 units pass through, the pin tumblers inside that cylinder are substantially more worn than the storage room, for unit 1.
So
the analogy there is the key you've sent me could be the storage door, or it could be the common door. It could be highly worn. It could be very, very little worn. But there's no correlation between the key that you've sent me and all these other keys you have out there, because the rate of usage and therefore wear it will be different.
Okay.
What would be better is to send me all the keys so I can make sure they all work. Meaning there could be a problem with some of the keys, and I'll say this is too far out of range. Or what would be best is to simply issue all new keys so that everyone starts with a factory original.
Yeah, I recognize that would be best, but that is, I think, impractical. Yeah, it's a matter of I've got key rings that have been around for 20 years. I'd like those key rings to still work.
That is not realistic. You speak of impracticality. I speak of the science of locksmithing that has existed a real long time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then this key machine. The only key machine that's needed for this job is a duplicator. I don't need an originator. I don't need a Fromen. I don't need an HPC 1200 Blitz. I don't need any of those machines. I need a duplicator. I need my Rytan RY200.
Okay. So I guess when you rekey the master lock cylinders, aren't the pins that you insert into that master lock, don't those have numbers, the 0 through 9 or whatever?
Every system is different, and that's what I had referred to earlier. The bitting, you can render it more easily understandable by the consumer by giving it 0 through 9. When you say 0 through 9, you mean a 10-depth two-step system. And okay, so you would know that applies to Corbin System 70, but not pre-System 70. So you would know these things. The fact of the matter is, when you have a worn key, I can't take pins necessarily right out of the pin kit and drop them in the cylinders, because those are original pins that are, if you put a caliper on them, they're going to measure an absolute definite repeatable length. What you have is a key blank that's used. Now, it may or may not be a problem for me to rekey these, but the science of locksmithing and my knowledge of locksmithing allows me to produce a lock that is keyed to a worn key.
Okay. So when you rekeyed that to fit the key that I gave you,
which I haven't yet. It's on my desk.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you can't just pull the pins out of the master lock rekey set. You've got to file them down effectively?
I didn't say those words. Filing pins is a amateur hackmaster means by which to arrive at an ending.
Well, okay, but nonetheless, I think what I heard, the pins from the kit would not work just out of the kit.
I didn't say that either. I said that they're a definite length when you measure them with a caliper.
Okay.
And that what you have is a key here that is not unused, cut to a very specific root depth. Yeah.
Right.
So,
right.
just a definition on bitting, it's effective plug diameter minus root depth is the numbers that you understand. But the way that locksmithing measures this is not by the length of the pin tumbler that you insert, but it's the amount of the key that remains. So when you say the key code is, 34242, those are the pins that I put in, but that's not the bitting. The bitting is the root depth. When you take a caliper and measure from the bottom of the key to the depth of the cut, that's the bitting.
Okay.
So whatever the effective plug diameter is on this, maybe 0.35, I'm guessing. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. Okay. Minus the root depth equals the pin length.
Okay.
So when someone gives you 34242 and calls it the bitting, it's not the bitting. You know that's the pin length. I'm going to provide you the bitting because that's all that I can give you absolutely, meaning unequivocally, on a worn key, on a used key. Okay,
so that's not going to be the pin combinations that I could use into.
It is though, because I said the pin length. You just have to do a little bit of math. It's effective plug diameter minus root.
Okay.
You'll have that once. But any locksmith will know what root depth is. I mean, it's like chapter 2 of Locksmithing 101.
Okay. Yeah. Let me pivot a little bit and try to explain my use case. Is that we've got properties in Ohio and Florida, and we have not been good with management of keys. And so I'm trying to improve that such that I understand if I need more locks, and I understand the code that I can provide to get more locks made like this.
Yeah, extremely common. A customer wants to call us and say, hey, I need you to key up a 3-flat to my master and then, units 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, and it's nice to be able to know what that master is.
Right. So I recognize you're not going to guarantee it, but that's ultimately what I'm after. And so whether it's the depth or the bitting, that code is what I'm trying to generate back from what I sent you.
Well, that's easy. I mean, that's just putting a caliper on it, and then you'll have it. I mean, you don't need a locksmith to do that. You need a caliper. However, every installed lock system has a life expectancy, whether it be
Right.
through the attrition of security or it be the physical wear and tear on keys and tumblers. And It was a major problem at the turn of the 20th century because they were using materials of disparate hardness, and keys would wear. And they actually put ball bearings inside certain chambers because the ball bearing would actually roll and substantially reduce wear and tear on the key. So at the end of the day, if you have enough use on these padlocks, you will get to a point sooner or later. It could be 3 decades or it could be 3 years from now that you'll start to have keys that won't work. And then you're going to have to decide to either Band-Aid that or say, okay, now it's year 7. It's time to recombinate all of the cylinders, meaning put in new factory original pins, and then use new factory original key blanks that have been cut by code.
Yes.
So I would use an originator for that, my Fromen or my Blitz.
Right.
So right now, if I understand correctly, both these padlocks are keyed to the key that you sent me. I'm going to ship it back with one key that I've cut. You're either going to have a problem with some, none, or all of the keys that you currently have in your possession.
Yeah, I know.
So if the system's not really old and the padlocks aren't used that often, you're probably not going to have any problem. But 0.003, that's the accepted threshold for a problem.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. I recognize I'm rolling the dice. I'm trying to replace. So the locks that are existing are master locks. They're the kind where you put the key you want to use in, and then you tap it to set the pin. They sit outside. They're in Sebring, and I've had to fiddle with them always. They get replaced maybe every 3 to 6 months, and ultimately, I'm hoping that I get a little bit longer life out of these. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't, c'est la vie.
Because they're weatherized, is that what it is? They've got this plastic cap and the cylinders covered?
I'm hoping that, but twofold. Number one, that they're weatherized, but also the tap style lock. I don't know. I wasn't impressed with that being the solution.
I'm not super familiar with a lot of Master. It's not that it's consumer grade, but it's more like Kwikset in the sense that you can look at the technology and say, this is how this works.
Yeah.
This cylinder doesn't work like other cylinders when you combine it. It's actually, once you know how it works, it's dreadfully simple, which is the beauty of the guy who thought it up a million years ago. And then also, if this continues to be a plague, you're probably going to want to invest in really high-quality padlocks on an actual full-size key system. So you can get padlocks that do this, that will take high security, that will take a Schlage C or a Corbin 70. You can do padlocks that will take actual full-size keys. And the point of that is, when you upgrade the quality, you would expect that the workmanship under the hood of a Ferrari to be better than on a Ford Edge. When you go to something that is a lot more expensive, you can generally expect a higher caliber of manufacturing process. The point being is one should last longer than the other.
I get it. But part of this of me not recalling keys is that, the Board of Health has a key. Like I said, I've got key rings that have been in that I'll come across. I'm like, And, as a landlord, I have a plague of keys, so I'd rather not, start another set of keys if I don't have to. And I recognize, right, this is a roll of the dice. If it doesn't work, okay, but, again, I'd like to try it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't expect you're going to have any trouble. It's just, I'm going to key this to the keys that are in front of me, and that's what I guarantee. When it leaves here, it's going to work.
Okay.
And I don't think you'll have a problem because this key doesn't look hyper-worn at all. But, yeah, it's at least second generation, and that's how we measure the accuracy of a key machine in terms of how it's currently duplicating keys. Can I get to a fourth or a fifth generation with no degradation in quality of the cut?
Right.
This doesn't look really that worn.
Well, that key is a new copy of the key that is on my ring.
And is your key a first generation key?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Well, if your key and this copy works those padlocks, then we're in good shape. Unless it's borderline and a really, you're dealing with soft materials and they do wear. I mean, the tumblers inside of here are probably brass, and your key is also brass, but the original one you have may not be brass. It may be nickel silver. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's the classic battle between convenience and practicality and the hard facts of science. Things wear is the bottom line.
Yep. So all I can say is give it a whirl, and we'll see what we come up with.
Oh, there's no whirling involved. When they leave here, it's done. I'm an Aloha CPL. I'm not the grand wizard of the clan, so to speak, but I'm his right hand man.
Okay.
It'll leave here when it's done.
Okay. Super. Well, thank you very much, Richard. I'll get a check in the mail. I hope to do it today, and hopefully these will just work.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Now, admittedly, I'm going to stab around in the dark a little bit on this project because what the client wants to know is what the bidding is. And I go on to explain to him what the definition of bidding, which is not correct. Because I don't know if I can derive the bidding on a worn key. I don't have a key gauge for master. What I am going to be able to know for sure is I have an original master pin tumbler kit. When I drop the pins in, I'll know what they are. So that's one. Number two, I have a HPC Blitz machine. If I've got a master card, I should be able to know the effective plug diameter, which means on that card should also be a list of the pins and their lengths as measured with a caliper. And I'm reaching for my caliper, but I don't need it yet. Which means I can do effective plug diameter minus root depth. Well, let's pull it out. I say root depth a number of times. I can for sure provide the client the root depth because I can just measure it. But he wants the bidding for his records, but he also wants the bidding most likely to be able to get original keys cut. And he makes a reference to a key machine. I challenge him on what key machine are you talking about? An originator, a duplicator? What are we talking about? So what he wants to know is what the bidding is so that he can have somebody, and that was a big part of it. Part of this job is my ability to tell him what the cuts are. Okay. I'm not really worried about failing that if I don't have the tools, but I can give him the root depth. And that will, there may be someone else who has more information. And what the client's going for is, and he references in the conversation, a number 0 through 9. And he certainly knows more about the science of locksmithing than the average person does, which would make sense. He's a landlord. Who knows how many properties are under his governance or responsibility. But there's a false sense of security when you think you know how something works. The science of locksmithing goes back in the modern times to before the Civil War. And that lock that was patented by Linus Yale Jr., Yale is a name that you've likely heard of, his lock is based on Egyptian technology from 4,000 years ago. So the science of locksmithing has been around for a really long time. Now, to the client's defense, what he's thinking is I'm going to know what pins I drop in there. I am. That's going to be the bidding. It will be. The problem is he makes a suggestion about filing pins or suggesting that I would file pins. We don't file pins. I know that pins are filed. We don't file pins. If you have to file pins to make something work, you have parts that you need to replace. Have I filed pins? Yes. Every locksmith, I'm sure, has. Have I done other things to get something to work because the client will not, cannot replace the worn parts? Sure. Making something work, good luck. But I have no way to file. Even if I wanted to file pins, I can't file these pins because the pins that will go in this lock are not regular builder's hardware pin tumblers that you would drop into rim or mortise cylinders or key and lever, key and knob sort of cylinders. They will certainly be a smaller diameter. And when you file pins, generally also what happens is you will have a vise, and then you will have a holder that the cylinder plug will go into. Well, in the cylinder plug is inserted the key and pin tumblers. And then from there, you can literally file the top of the pins that are sticking out too high to make it conform to the outside circumference of the cylinder plug. I have no way of doing that here. If I wanted to, I couldn't do it because I can't get the cylinder plug out of this master lock. At least I don't believe I can. So if this key was so exceptionally worn, I would be able to take a longer pin and literally just file it, and it will probably work acceptably. But when you do that, you really exclude a lot of possibility of other keys working, because all you've done is you filed those pins to be that exact size of that plug with no chamfered outside circumference on the top of the pin tumbler, which is part of the system, etc. So filing pins would be very problematic for the client in the sense that it's an existing environment. He's got other stuff that needs to also work here. So what I'm going to do is I will show you what we're doing. We've got two master padlocks. These are 6121s blue. He wants these because they're reasonably weatherproofed. He's having problems with moisture because these are installed in an exterior environment. These are not very expensive. They are easy to take apart. If I have to refer to the technical manual, I will. There is a technical manual that Master has for this. And I actually called them earlier this week and asked a couple of questions about their part numbers. And the folks there were and have always been extremely expert in terms of answering the questions I have. Okay, so we'll have to get that cylinder out. We've got some O-bitted keys, well, one-bitted, whatever that is. And I'm going to take one of these blanks that they shipped with once I get everything open, and I'll copy on my duplicator probably my Ritan RY 100 or 200, I forget what I have, is how I'll copy that. I won't originate a key because I don't have the right card to take the root depth, take the effective plug diameter, take the root depth, and then subtract the difference. I don't have a code card for that. I'm not even sure if I have a master code card to begin with, which means I could put it into my HPC Blitz and make it work from there. Now, what I can do is if I really wanted to, I could take out my Fromen and I could measure my root depth here and then cut to those dimensions. Knowing the effective plug diameter, I'd be able to duplicate this by physical dimensions, not by using a whole number like the client said, 0 through 9. Well, 0 through 9 is definitely what we would call a 10-depth two-step system. The client is definitely referring to Schlage. Any system that has a two-step system, meaning that you'll have, in Schlage's example, you'll have cuts 0 through 9. That's a total of 10 cuts, 0 through 9. If you measure a 3-pin, it will be X dimension. If you measure a 7-pin, it will be X dimension. A 7 is bigger than 3. Logic tells you that that pin is probably longer. It is actually. But what's interesting about that is the root depth would be smaller because you're cutting more of the key away. So the client's using terminology that don't try to impress a dentist. They really don't appreciate it. With using, words like amalgam. Don't try to impress a locksmith. It just give the locksmith the operational description, what needs to happen, and let them convert that into their training of the industry terminology and the approach by which it is accomplished, because the locksmith is focused on maintaining overall system security. Filing pins is not maintaining system security. Replacing worn keys that would cause you to file pins, that's maintaining system security. So no shortcuts. So what we'll do is we'll switch back to the screen view. I want to look at the master technical manual to have an idea of what we're about to get into, and then see if there is an HPC code card for master, and if there is, I may have one here which we can then look at. So let's do that now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, let's take a look at what additional resources I have, if any. Manufacturers. Master Lock Technical Manual. I know that this document exists. I've scrolled through it a few times. I've looked for parts in it a couple of times. But as I opened this document and started scrolling, I did not expect that the 6121 would be on page 4. So, let's learn about this together. Looking at this definitely tells me the only way to get the cylinder out is to have a working key so that you can get an Allen key to that screw to pull that rivet out, to get that shroud out, to pull the cylinder plug off. Now, if I recall correctly, when you rekey these, you don't pull the plug out of the housing, out of the shell. I think you just turn it 180 degrees and you load it that way. We'll discover that. Let's take a look. All of the Pro Series have a generic construction technology that allows for a uniform assembly and disassembly technique. Below is a step-by-step procedure for disassembling one of these padlocks. Refer to the diagram. Awesome. I do believe I said earlier how great they are. The only exceptions to this procedure will be the door hardware and IC versions of this lock. I don't know what a door hardware version of it is. Obviously a different lock. I know what IC is. This will all be different if you have interchangeable core. You wouldn't do any of this, I would guess. Use the key to unlock the shackle. If the key is unavailable, you will have to use another method to unlock the shackle. That's fun that they say that. What would be other methods of unlocking the shackle? Obviously, using locksmithing techniques to bypass that cylinder is the answer. Use a 7/64 hex key to remove the mounting screw located inside the toe side shackle hole. That's the toe side. Holding the trapdoor D in place, lock the shackle A into the padlock body. This relieves pressure on actuator E. Yeah, I don't want to disassemble the padlock. I just want to get the cylinder out. So I think all I need to do is loosen that. These two pieces will come out and the cylinder should come out. Reverse the order to reassemble. If the lock only needs to be rekeyed, it's not necessary to remove the actuator, ball bearings, or shackle. Yeah, we're not going to go nearly that far. Or part E, which is the actuator, right. Two functions are available, non-key retaining and key retaining, and both functions are accomplished as a design feature of the actuator. Sure, this would tell me that this is probably non-key retaining. The non-key retaining function actuator is used in a lock has a projection on one side. You should note the orientation of this projection when removing the actuator. We're not removing the actuator. I'm going to skip over that along with this. Parts listed on pages 4 and 6. Okay, awesome. Now, I don't know what keyway this is in, but I can tell you it's a W1. This is a W1 keyway. I have another document here that I'd like to take a peek at. Lock, keys, and keyways. Right there, W1. It's a 4-pin blank. So this 6121 is a W1. It's a 4-pin blank. I believe that the plug is drilled for probably 6 pins, probably 6, but it's a W1. I know that the key the client sent us fits in the cylinder. I don't know how I made a good educated guess as to specify these in W1, but I think it's because Master Lock was contacted and the existing key padlocks were described, and it was a very good educated guess that W1 would be the keyway, because I'd never seen the original key until it arrived here as a result of the client mailing it to us. So we know we have a W1. That's good. That's really, really good to know. We've got a W1. So in the future, if we're able to provide the client bitting, or at least root depths, you also then have to specify what blank you want that cut on, because this is the broaching profile in the cylinder plug. You can see a W1 and a W2K or a W17. Their shape is different. You can cut the bitting onto any of these 4-pin key blanks, but it ain't going to fit the cylinder. So that's really nice to know. Now, I talked about the code card from HPC. Let's go into that. Okay, HPC. Now, if you get to any HPC item in our site, and then I'm going to pull up what's called their depth and spacing data by manufacturer. Let's click on that. let's hit Control F for Master. Master Large Pin. Master Pro 2001 Plus. Master Pro Series. Master Small Pin. I'm going to think this is called Small Pin, but I'm not really sure. So a Blitz card is going to be a C35 for large pin, and then C34 for small pin. Okay, so C34, C35. I've got a link to it here, but that's not going to help us really at all. And a C35. Okay, so now the next thing is to find out whether or not I have this card physically here. So let me tell you how we're going to do that. We're going to search for Blitz on HPC. And what we want to do is find out all the code cards that are included with a Blitz. Okay, so looking at the Blitz, it shows me what's included. So the Deck 150 is included. I know that I've got a Deck 150 here. Look at that. It has both a C34 and a C35 included. So I'm going to go get my binder down, which has all my code cards in it, and I'm going to take a look at that. Let's switch to the camera view and take a look.
Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.